The doors to the Grand Assembly opened, and Lieutenant Commander Vera Hollis stepped into the largest room she had ever seen. The chamber stretched upward for what seemed like forever. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, each row higher than the last, until they disappeared into the darkness above. Every seat was filled with beings that Vera's mind struggled to understand. Some were made of light. Others looked like insects the size of trucks. A few appeared to be nothing more than floating clouds of colored gas. 900 species. Representatives from every corner of the known galaxy. All of them watching her. Vera was not supposed to be here. She was a construction engineer, not a diplomat. Her job was building things on distant planets, not standing before the most powerful governing body in existence. But Ambassador Hollis, her father, had collapsed from a stress-induced heart attack 3 hours before this hearing was scheduled to begin. Now she stood in his place, wearing his diplomatic badge, carrying the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. The central platform floated above a pit of absolute darkness. No bottom was visible. Vera understood that this was intentional. The design was meant to remind speakers that they stood at the edge of oblivion, that their words could either save them or send them, falling into nothing. She stepped onto the platform. A voice filled the chamber, coming from everywhere at once. It belonged to something called the Prime Arbiter, a being of shifting geometric shapes that floated above a crystal throne at the highest point of the assembly. The human delegation will explain why their colony on Kepler 442b should not be terminated. Vera felt her heart pound. Terminated, not relocated, not reassigned, terminated. We have evaluated your species for 18 standard cycles, the Prime Arbiter continued. Your settlement has failed to meet the basic requirements for permanent civilization status. Your structures remain temporary. Your environmental integration is non-existent. Your progress is unacceptable. A holographic display erupted around Vera, showing images of the human colony. Prefabricated buildings sat in muddy fields. Construction equipment lay scattered between half-finished structures. People in worksuits trudged through the settlement, looking exhausted and defeated. Observe the Palori settlement established in the same sector. The images shifted to show towers of living coral rising from an alien sea. Beautiful, organic, and according to the display, completed in just 4 standard cycles. Observe the crystalline assembly's outpost. Massive geometric domes appeared, perfectly transparent, glowing with internal energy. Built in 6 cycles. Your species has occupied Kepler 442b for 73 cycles. You still live in boxes. Laughter rippled through the assembly. Vera heard it in frequencies that hurt her ears, in vibrations she felt in her bones, in flashes of light that seemed to pulse with mockery. This is not a laughing matter. The voice came from Vera's own mouth, surprising her. She had not planned to speak yet, but something in her had snapped. The laughter stopped. Explain yourself, human, the Prime Arbiter said. Vera straightened her back. Her father had spent months preparing diplomatic arguments, careful language designed to buy humanity more time. But Vera was not a diplomat. She was an engineer. And engineers solved problems. You say we have failed to build permanent structures, she said. I say you have failed to understand what we are building. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Several species shifted in their seats, their various forms of expression indicating surprise, curiosity, or offense. The Palori grow their structures over generations, Vera continued. The coral towers you showed were begun by their great-grandparents. The crystalline assembly constructs through molecular accumulation. Each dome represents decades of patient layering. These are beautiful methods. They are also slow. Slowness indicates wisdom, someone called out from the upper tiers. Slowness indicates you have time to spare. Humanity does not. Vera began walking across the platform, forcing the assembly to track her movement. Our lifespans are short. Our bodies are fragile. Our history is marked by disasters that destroyed everything we built and forced us to start over. We have never had the luxury of growing structures over centuries. We build fast because we must. Speed without quality is meaningless, the Prime Arbiter said. Then let me demonstrate quality. The words left Vera's mouth before she fully understood what she was saying. But once they were spoken, she knew she could not take them back. You want proof that humanity can build permanent civilization? Give me one standard cycle, 26 of your hours. Send observers to any location you choose. I will personally show you what humans can accomplish. The chamber erupted. Voices clashed in hundreds of languages, all of them expressing shock, disbelief, or outrage. You are not the designated ambassador, the Prime Arbiter observed. No, I am something better. I am a builder. A being rose from the middle tiers. It was massive, covered in black carapace, with multiple limbs ending in sharp points. Vera recognized it from the briefing files as a hegemony delegate, representative of one of the most powerful military coalitions in the galaxy. This is a waste of time, the delegate declared. The humans have proven their inadequacy. I call for immediate termination of their charter. Support gathered. Lights began appearing throughout the assembly, indicating votes in favor of the hegemony position. Vera watched the count climb. I invoke the right of demonstration. Every light stopped. Vera had found the phrase, buried in the Council's founding documents. During a sleepless night, researching for her father. It was an ancient privilege, unused for centuries, but never formally removed. Article 7, Section 12, she continued. Any species facing classification review has the right to demonstrate their capabilities under direct observation. You cannot deny me this. The Prime Arbiter's geometric form twisted in patterns that suggested deep calculation. Right of demonstration has not been invoked in 800. Cycles, then you are overdue. Silence stretched across the chamber. Vera could feel thousands of eyes, sensors, and other perceptual organs focused on her. She was one human, standing alone, challenging the combined authority of 900 civilizations. If I fail, she said, we will accept your judgment. But when I succeed, you will owe humanity more than an apology. You will owe us respect. The hegemony delegate made a sound like metal scraping against stone. Arrogance. Confidence. There is a difference. The Prime Arbiter descended slowly toward the platform, its shifting form coming close enough that Vera could feel heat radiating from its surface. The right of demonstration is granted, it said. You have one cycle. 5 observers will be assigned to monitor your efforts. They will also determine the location and conditions of your test. Understood. Choose your team carefully, human builder. Your observers will not be sympathetic. Vera met the Arbiter's gaze, if the shifting patterns of light could be called a gaze. I do not need sympathy. I need witnesses. She turned and walked off the platform, feeling the weight of galactic attention following her every step. Behind her, the assembly dissolved into chaos as species debated what they had just witnessed. In the corridor outside the chamber, Vera leaned against the wall and tried to control her breathing. Her hands were shaking. Her heart felt like it might burst through her chest. She had just committed humanity to an impossible task. 20-6 hours to build something that would impress civilizations millions of years older than her species. 26 hours to prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. Her communication device buzzed. A message from Earth Command appeared on the screen, asking what had happened in the hearing. Vera typed her response with trembling fingers. "I need a construction team. The best we have. And I need them yesterday." She pushed off the wall and headed toward the transport. Bay. 20-6 hours. The clock was already running. The transport ship descended through poisonous clouds toward a sin landscape that looked like a nightmare. Vera stared through the viewport at jagged mountains, rivers that glowed with toxic chemicals, and a sky that shifted between orange and purple as two suns fought for dominance. The Council observers had chosen this location specifically. They wanted humanity to fail. Beside her sat the 4 people who would determine whether her species survived the next cycle. Marco was a structural specialist who had built emergency shelters on 3 different planets. Amira handled environmental systems and could make air breathable almost anywhere. Lars was a geologist who could read rock the way other people read books. And finally, there was Rosa, who everyone simply called the problem solver because she could fix anything that broke. 5 humans against the Jung. Judgment of 900 civilizations. Observers had taken positions at the rear of the transport. There were 5 of them, each representing a different approach to construction. Observer 1 was called Pale Voice. It belonged to the Pelori, the species whose coral towers had been shown during the hearing. Pale Voice resembled a humanoid made of smooth ivory, with eyes that reflected like polished mirrors. Observer 2 was named Solid Mind, a member of the Crystalline Assembly. Its body appeared to be made of living gemstone, faceted surfaces catching light with every movement. Observer 3 introduced itself as Many Together, representing the collective mind. It was not a single being, but a cloud of tiny machines that moved like liquid metal and spoke with thousands of voices at once. Observer 4 was ancient beyond measure, being called the Recorder. Its species had no other name. They simply watched and documented everything. The Recorder looked like a bundle of dry branches, animated by unknown forces. Observer 5 was the most unusual. It was called Walking Far, a member of the Wandering People. They never built anything permanent. They roamed the galaxy as eternal nomads, observing others but never settling. Walking Far had skin the color of midnight and eyes like deep wells. Temperature fluctuation of 40 degrees between day and night, Amira reported, reading her sensors. Atmosphere is toxic without filtration. Seismic activity detected within 50 kilometers. The soil composition will make traditional foundation work impossible. They really do want us to fail, Marco muttered. Then we will disappoint them, Vera said. The transport landed hard, skids scraping against rocky ground. Warning lights flashed across every display. External conditions were marked as hostile across the board. Vera unsealed the cargo bay and stepped out into the alien wind. The cold hit her immediately, cutting through her thermal suit like it was made of paper. Sand and rock particles swirled around her, scraping against her visor. The smell of sulfur and metal penetrated her filters. Behind her, the 5 observers emerged from the transport. They showed no discomfort. Their various physiologies were either adapted to such conditions or simply did not care about physical sensation. "You have 26 hours, Pale Voice announced. "We will observe. We will not assist. At the end of this period, we will determine whether your construction demonstrates the capacity for permanent civilization." "Understood," Vera said. "Marco, start surveying for foundation points. Lars, I need a complete geological analysis within the hour. Amira, set up atmospheric monitoring. Rosa, begin unpacking the equipment." The team scattered across the landscape, each person moving with purpose despite exhaustion and fear. Vera noticed Walking Far, watching her with unusual intensity. The wandering observer had said nothing since leaving the council chamber. Something you want to ask? Vera said. You are not like your diplomat, Walking Far replied. He would have argued. He would have negotiated. You act. Diplomats talk. Builders build. Walking Far made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been wind passing through dead leaves. We shall see what you build, human. The first 3 hours were chaos organized into purpose. Lars discovered something unexpected beneath the hostile surface. A layer of stable bedrock existed 6 meters down, along with an underground water table that the Council surveys had completely missed. They had been looking for threats, not resources. This changes everything, Vera said, studying his data. We can anchor directly to the bedrock instead of fighting the unstable surface layer. The excavation will take time we do not have, Solid Mind observed. Crystalline construction would begin molecular bonding immediately upon landing. You are already behind schedule. We have a different schedule. Vera called her team together around a portable display. She projected a holographic image of what she intended to build. It was not a shelter. The observers had seen human shelters, the gray boxes that dotted the colony on Kepler 442b. This was something else entirely. 3 stories tall, with lines that echoed the mountain ridges surrounding the valley. Windows positioned to capture light from both suns. A foundation that would reach down to grip the bedrock like fingers clutching stone. That is impossible, Pale Voice said flatly. Such a structure would require years of biological growth. It would require decades of molecular assembly. Solid Mind added, then it is fortunate we are using neither method. The next hours became a blur of activity that confused and frustrated the observers. Instead of assembling prefabricated components, the humans scattered across the landscape collecting samples. Instead of beginning immediate construction, they argued over data readings and chemical compositions. Instead of following any recognizable pattern, they seemed to be doing everything at once while accomplishing nothing. They are failing, many together announced, their collective voice carrying disappointment. Random activity without purpose. Perhaps they have already given up, the recorder suggested, documenting everything with detached precision. Only Walking Far remained silent, watching with those deep well eyes. At hour 4. Everything changed. Marco began operating an excavator, but instead of digging a traditional pit, he carved channels into the ground in a complex pattern that made no sense to the observers. Vera and Lars assembled a device from components that had seemed unrelated during the landing. Amira and Rosa processed rock samples in a small furnace that glowed white-hot despite the freezing wind. They are cooking stones, many together observed. Is this a religious practice? Chemical processing, the recorder corrected. They are extracting calcium compounds from native rock. Purpose unclear. The purpose became clear at hour 5. Vera's device was a mobile concrete mixer, but the mixture it produced was not ordinary concrete. Lars had added compounds from the local soil, materials that reacted with planetary chemistry to accelerate curing. The heated channels Marco had carved now received warm fluid that began hardening almost immediately. They are not building with imported materials, the recorder said slowly. They are transforming the environment into building materials. That is what Pelori do, Pale Voice said, confusion evident in every syllable. But we do it through biological cultivation, through life. This is just chemistry and brute force. Is brute force not a form of life? Walking Far asked. No one answered. By hour 8, the foundation had solidified. The channels formed a grid that would distribute weight evenly across the unstable terrain. The design was not elegant. It was practical. It was fast. And it was only the beginning. Vera stood over the completed foundation, her body aching, her hands raw despite protective gloves. The observers had gathered closer, their various sensory organs focused on what the humans had accomplished. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. "Now comes the hard part. What could be harder than this?" Solid Mind asked. Vera smiled, exhaustion and determination mixing in equal measure. "Building the walls." She turned to her team, who were already preparing for the next phase. "We have 18 hours left. Let us show them how humans really build." The observers exchanged glances across their various forms of communication. Something had shifted in the dynamic. The mockery was gone. What replaced it was harder to identify. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. Hour 9. The walls began to rise. Throughout the night, Rosa had been doing something the observers dismissed as pointless. While others built the foundation, she processed local stone in the portable furnace, extracting calcium and mixing it with sand and water. The result was a simple compound that civilizations across the galaxy had abandoned millions of years ago. Cement blocks. Hundreds of them, each weighing 15 kilograms. Each still warm from the curing process. "You intend to stack these by hand," the recorder observed. "That is exactly what we intend," Vera replied. "This is primitive. The crystalline assembly abandoned manual construction before your species discovered fire." Vera picked up the first block and carried it to the foundation. Her muscles screamed with fatigue. Her back ached from the hours of work already completed. But she set the block in place with precision, checking its alignment before reaching for the next. The other humans followed. Marco took position along what would become the north wall. Amira handled the south. Lars and Rosa worked the east and west. They moved in a rhythm that seemed almost unconscious. Lift, carry, place, return, lift, carry, place, return. Within an hour, the first wall reached knee height. "They are not stopping," Solid Mind observed, running internal calculations. "Crystalline workers require rest cycles every 4 hours. Our metabolism cannot sustain such continuous expenditure. Pelori cultivators would never engage in such labor at all," Pale Voice added. "We guide biological growth. We do not strain and sweat like animals." "Yet their wall grows," Walking Far said quietly. "By hour 12, the walls reached human chest height." The team had developed a simple system. Rosa continued making blocks. The others rotated between lifting, carrying, and placing. Brief breaks for water and food happened in shifts, never stopping the work completely. Vera's hands were bleeding now, the gloves worn through in places. Her shoulders felt like they might separate from her body. Every breath was a battle against exhaustion. But she kept lifting, kept carrying, kept placing. "Why do you do this?" Walking Far asked, moving closer to the construction site. Vera set down her block before answering. "Because it needs to be done. Other species find ways to build without such suffering. Other species have time we do not have. Methods we cannot use. Resources we cannot access." Vera wiped sweat from her face, leaving a smear of dust and blood. "Humans have our bodies, our will, our determination to create something from nothing. This is what we are. This is what we have always been." She picked up another block. "Every human structure you have ever seen was built by hands like these, bloody, tired, refusing to stop." The wall reached 2 meters at hour 14. Marco had constructed scaffolding from the lightweight alloy struts they had brought from Earth, creating platforms that allowed them to lift blocks to higher levels. Then the earthquake struck. The ground heaved without warning. Vera grabbed the scaffolding as the world tilted. Somewhere behind her, she heard blocks falling, mortar cracking, hours of work collapsing in seconds. The shaking lasted 30 seconds. It felt like hours. When stillness returned, Vera surveyed the damage. One entire section of the east wall had collapsed. Cracks ran through the mortar of the south wall. At least 30% of their progress was destroyed. "The demonstration should be concluded," Pale Voice announced. "Your structure has failed seismic testing. Pylori bioforms would have flexed with the earthquake. Your rigid construction is unsuited to this environment. We are not done." Vera was already moving, examining the damage, calculating what could be saved and what needed to be rebuilt. "You cannot repair this in the time remaining." Solid Mind said, "Watch me." The next 4 hours were brutal, beyond anything Vera had experienced. The team worked through exhaustion that felt like drowning, through muscles that had moved past pain into numbness, through a second, smaller earthquake that made the new mortar crack but not fail. Lars developed a modified cement mixture with higher flexibility. Rosa heated it to a specific temperature that allowed faster curing without sacrificing strength. Marco redesigned sections of the wall with subtle angles that would distribute seismic force more efficiently. They did not just repair the damage. They improved upon it. At hour 18, the walls stood complete at full height. 3 stories of hand-laid blocks, windows framed with native stone, doorways positioned according to Vera's original design. But something was wrong. The observers were no longer simply watching the construction. They were watching Vera. She stood in the center of what would become the ground floor, holding a container of mineral pigment. The walls were finished. The structure was taking shape. Yet instead of continuing the main construction, she was painting the interior. "She has lost focus," many together announced. "Mental deterioration from exhaustion. Perhaps we should intervene," Pale Voice suggested. "For humanitarian reasons." "No," Walking Far said. "Watch." Vera painted with hands that trembled but moved with purpose. The pigments came from local minerals. Iron oxide created deep red-brown tones. Copper compounds produced blue-green shades. The patterns she created echoed the mountain ridges visible through the window openings. On the second floor, Rosa was installing something even stranger. Shelves, simple wooden shelves cut from cargo containers. Above them, she mounted an empty frame, waiting for something that did not yet exist. "What are you doing?" the recorder demanded, approaching Vera directly. "You have hours remaining. Your roof is not complete. Your atmospheric ceiling is non-existent. Why are you decorating?" Vera set down her brush. "Because a roof makes a shelter. This makes a home. There is no difference. There is the most important difference in the universe." Vera turned to face all 5 observers. They had gathered closer during her painting, drawn by confusion that bordered on concern. "You ask why humans build the way we build. You see our speed and call it desperation. You see our labor and call it primitive. You see our temporary structures and call it failure. But you do not see what we are actually creating." She gestured to the painted walls, the wooden shelves, the empty picture frame. The Pylori grow buildings over generations. Each structure carries biological memory of every family that lived there. The crystalline assembly builds through decades of patient layering. Each dome is meditation made solid. Even the collective builds through consensus, millions of minds agreeing on every decision. "These are superior methods," Solid Mind said. "They are different methods, and they produce different results." Vera's voice grew stronger despite her exhaustion. "Your structures are beautiful, elegant, perfect. They are also impersonal. They belong to the method, not the maker. Human buildings are different. Every wall carries the sweat of the people who raised it. Every room holds the decisions they made, the problems they solved, the pain they endured. When we look at our structures, we do not see architecture. We see ourselves." She pointed to the painted mountains. "My grandmother painted mountains on her kitchen wall in a house that flooded 3 times. Every time she repainted them. She said the mountains reminded her that some things endure. Yet we endure. She pointed to the empty frame. My father kept a photograph of my mother in a frame, exactly like that one. He rebuilt his house twice after hurricanes. The frame survived both times. The frame mattered more than the walls. This is sentiment, Pale Voice said. Emotion, not construction. This is why we build. Every species builds shelter. Only humans build homes. Places that hold meaning. Places that carry memory. Places that make the universe feel less empty and cold. Vera picked up her brush again. You want to know if humanity can build permanent civilization? Watch how we make homes in hostile places. Watch how we pour ourselves into stone and mortar. Watch how we refuse to just survive when we could truly live. She returned to her painting. And when I am done, you will understand why 26 hours is not a limitation for us. It is an invitation. The observers stood in silence, watching a human paint mountains on walls that were not yet complete, in a structure that still had no roof. On a planet that wanted them dead, something had changed. None of them could quite identify what, but walking far, the eternal nomad who had never built anything permanent, found himself stepping forward to touch the painted stone. It was warm beneath his fingers. It felt like belonging. Hour 20. The roof presented a problem that threatened to destroy everything. Vera stood on the third floor, looking up at open sky. The binary suns had begun their rise, painting the clouds in shades of violet and gold, beautiful, mocking. Reminder that time was running out and the hardest challenge remained. Cement blocks worked for walls. They could not span the open distance above the third story without support columns that would divide the interior space into useless fragments. Native materials could not solve this problem. They needed something else. The ceiling will collapse under its own weight, Solid Mind declared with mathematical certainty. Your construction methods have reached their limit. Marco approached Vera quietly, his face showing the same exhaustion that pulled at everyone. The shuttle, he said. The cargo panels. Vera understood immediately. The transport that had brought them here had 3 large panels forming the cargo hold walls. Each panel covered approximately 20 square meters. If they cut them properly, reinforced the edges, created supports from remaining alloy struts, the panels could span the gap, but removing them would cripple the shuttle. We need that ship to leave, Vera said. If we lose this demonstration, we will not need the ship. They will revoke everything. The colony, the charter, every home we built on Kepler 442b. Marco's voice cracked with exhaustion. Everyone who made that planet their home, gone. The weight of truth settled over the team. Amira stopped working. Lars set down his tools. Rosa climbed down from the scaffolding. They gathered around Vera, waiting for her decision. The hegemony delegate was right, Pale Voice observed. Your species is desperate. You would strand yourselves on a hostile world to win a demonstration. We would strand ourselves to save our people, Vera corrected. There is a difference. She looked at each member of her team. They were beyond exhausted, beyond pain, beyond any reasonable limit of human endurance. And yet their eyes held something that the observers could not quantify. Hope, determination, refusal to surrender. Do it, Vera said. Cut the panels. We finish this. The next 3 hours were controlled destruction, followed by precise reconstruction. Marco and Lars climbed into the transport with plasma cutting tools. The work required careful planning. Cut too much, and the shuttle would never fly again. Cut too little, and they would not have enough material to complete the roof. Sparks flew as superheated. Plasma sliced through aerospace alloys. The panels fell one by one, lowered by ropes and human muscle to the waiting construction site. They have destroyed their only means of escape, many together observed. The ship can still achieve orbit, but emergency landing capability is compromised. If anything goes wrong, they will die on this planet. Everything is already going wrong, Walking Far said. And they continue anyway. Hour 22. The panels were in position, but not secured. Lars had designed a support structure using the remaining alloy struts. 4 columns would rise from reinforced points in the wall, meeting a central framework that would hold the panels in place. The design was sound. The execution was dangerous. Marco worked on the highest scaffolding, guiding the first panel into position. His hands were swollen to nearly twice their normal size. His movements were slow, calculated, forcing precision despite a body that screamed for rest. The panel slipped. Time seemed to freeze as 300 kilograms of metal sheeting swung free. Cables snapped. The panel arced toward the newly completed walls with momentum that would shatter everything it touched. Marco did not think. He moved. His body slammed into the edge of the panel, not stopping it, but redirecting it. Physics took over. The panel crashed into the scaffolding instead of the walls. Metal bent. Wood splintered. Marco disappeared in the wreckage. Then silence. Vera reached him first. He was conscious but pale, his right arm bent at an angle that no arm should ever bend. Compound fracture, Amira reported, examining him with careful hands. Radius and ulna both broken. He needs evacuation. No. Marco's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the noise. Set it. Wrap it. Let me work. Marco, you cannot possibly... The panel. Did it break the wall? Vera looked. The stone stood intact. Marco's sacrifice had saved hours of work. No, you saved it. Then set my damn arm and let me finish. The observers watched as the humans splinted the broken bones with emergency supplies. Pain medication was administered. Marco's arm was bound against, his chest in a position that would let him work with one hand. He was on his feet within 20 minutes. This is insanity, Solid Mind declared. The human has sustained serious injury. Continued labor risks permanent damage. Logic demands cessation of work and medical treatment. We are not known for logic, Vera replied. She climbed the scaffolding herself this time, taking Marco's position for the final panel placement. Her arms trembled with exhaustion. Her vision blurred at the edges. But she guided each piece into place with the precision of someone who had been building things since childhood. Hour 24. The roof was sealed. Atmospheric containment activated. The sensors showed green across all displays. Breathable air began filling the structure. Heat distribution normalized. For the first time in 26 hours, the team could remove their filtration masks. Vera stood in the center of the completed ground floor, breathing air that did not taste like metal and sulfur. Around her, the walls held paintings of mountains. Shelves waited for possessions. Windows framed views of an alien landscape that no longer seemed quite so hostile. Rosa approached with a small object in her hands. A photograph, printed hastily before they left the main colony. It showed a group of colonists, families with children, standing in front of the gray prefab structures that the council had mocked. She placed it in the empty frame. Now it is a home, Rosa said quietly. 2 hours remained. The observers had withdrawn to a distance of 50 meters. Their various forms of communication operating in frequencies beyond human perception. Vera knew they were deliberating, deciding, judging everything they had witnessed over the past 24 hours. She also knew that she had done everything possible. The structure stood. The roof held. The walls were solid enough to survive earthquakes. A family could live here. A life could be built within these rooms. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. You should rest, Walking Far said, approaching Vera as she stood in the doorway. Not yet. There is still time on the clock. Time for what? Your construction is complete. Vera looked out at the alien landscape. The binary suns had completed their journey across the sky, now beginning to set behind the jagged mountains. The light they cast was warm amber, turning the harsh terrain into something almost beautiful. Time to appreciate what we have built, she said. Humans do not just create. We reflect. We remember. We understand that every structure we raise is a statement about who we are and what we value. She gestured to the interior. These walls will outlast me. Long after my bones have turned to dust, someone will live in this home. They will see the mountains I painted. They will use the shelves Rosa installed. They will look at that photograph and wonder about the people who placed it there. That is mortality, Walking Far said. Awareness of death. That is why we build homes instead of shelters. Shelters protect bodies. Homes preserve meaning. They carry something forward after we are gone. A promise that we existed, that we mattered, that we refused to simply survive when we could truly live. The final sun dipped below the horizon. 20-6. Hours had passed. Vera stepped back into her home and waited for judgment. The observers approached. Whatever they had decided, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity had given everything. Now, the galaxy would decide if it was enough. The Grand Assembly had transformed. Vera stood on the same floating platform where she had invoked the right of demonstration. But something fundamental had shifted. The thousands of delegates still filled the ascending tiers. The Prime Arbiter still floated above its crystal throne. The hostile darkness still yawned beneath the platform. Yet the silence felt different. Before, it had been contempt waiting to be expressed. Now it was anticipation bordering on tension. The observers will present their findings, the Prime Arbiter announced, one by one. The 5 beings who had witnessed 26 hours of human construction took positions around the platform. Each would speak. Each would be heard. Then the galaxy would vote on humanity's future. Pale Voice went first. The Palori assessment is that human construction methods differ fundamentally from our own. We grow structures over generations. They raise structures through immediate physical intervention. Where we cultivate, they force. Where we guide, they command. Pale Voice paused, mirrored eyes reflecting Vera's face. Their approach achieves comparable results in drastically reduced timeframes. This is unexpected. This is significant. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Solid Mind spoke next. The crystalline assembly built our civilization on patience. Molecular layering. Decades of accumulated precision. We believed this was the only path to permanent construction. The gemstone being's faceted surfaces caught light as it turned to face the full assembly. We were mistaken. Human stress tolerances exceed our calculations by a significant margin. Their foundation design survived seismic forces that would have damaged equivalent crystalline structures. Their methods are crude. Their methods are effective. More murmurs. Louder now. Many. Together's collective voice filled the chamber. The collective builds through consensus. Millions of minds in harmony. We observed human construction and initially saw only chaos. Random activity without coordination. The liquid metal cloud pulsed with complex patterns. We were wrong. Human cooperation is internalized through training and trust. They do not need external consensus because they carry agreement within themselves. Each human knows their role. Each human adapts without instruction. This is a form of collective mind we had not previously recognized. The assembly was no longer silent. Delegates communicated openly in frequencies, and colors and vibrations net overlapped into sensory noise. The recorder spoke. with the weight of eons. I have documented the rise and fall of civilizations across timescales that exceed human comprehension. I have watched species achieve permanent habitation through every method imaginable. I have never witnessed what these humans accomplished. The bundle of animated branches shifted, focusing perception organs that had watched galaxies form and die. They did not merely build a structure. They built meaning. They poured identity into stone. They created something the galaxy has forgotten how to make. A home. The word hung in the air. Then Walking Far stepped forward, and the assembly fell completely silent. The wandering people never spoke at council deliberations. They observed. They documented. They moved on. In 3,000 cycles of council membership, no wanderer had ever offered official testimony. Until now. My people rejected permanent settlement long ago, Walking Far began. We believed it was a trap, a cage, a denial of the universe's essential motion. We wander because we believe freedom requires constant movement. Walking Far turned to face Vera directly. In 26 hours, I watched humans challenge everything I believed about building and belonging. I saw them break their bodies and continue working. I saw them sacrifice their only means of escape to complete their construction. I saw them paint walls before their roof was finished because beauty mattered more than sequence. I saw them create something I thought impossible, a place where wanderers might rest, a structure that holds meaning instead of just protecting. Bodies. Walking Far's deep well eyes seemed to contain galaxies. Wandering people formally recommend full recognition of human settlement capabilities. Furthermore, we recommend that all species observe human methods, not to adopt them, to remember what we have lost in our pursuit of perfection. The assembly exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted in hundreds of languages. Support and opposition clashed in frequencies that made the chamber walls vibrate. The hegemony delegate rose from the middle tiers, carapace gleaming with fury. This is madness. The massive insectoid roared. We have watched 5 observers become infected with human sentiment. They speak of meaning in homes as if these concepts have any relevance to galactic civilization. The hegemony delegate descended toward the platform. What did the humans actually accomplish? They built one structure. One small dwelling that will house perhaps 3 family units. The hegemony constructs habitation complexes for millions. We process entire planetary surfac. Ease for colonization. We achieve efficiency that these primitives cannot comprehend. And yet, Vera said, her voice cutting through the noise, your citizens are the most unhappy in the galaxy. The delegate stopped moving. The hegemony has the highest rates of social dysfunction among council species. Vera continued. Criminal behavior. Psychological disorders. What you call efficiency failures. Your people live in perfect structures and feel nothing. Your habitation complexes are flawless and meaningless. You have optimized yourselves into misery. You dare, I state facts. Your own survey data confirms this. The hegemony builds housing. We build homes. There is a difference, and that difference matters more than any efficiency calculation. Vera stepped toward the delegate, showing no fear despite the alien's massive size. Humanity will never match your production capacity. We will never process planets or construct millions of units in the time you do. But we will build homes that people love. Homes that hold memories. Homes that make the universe feel less cold and empty. She turned to address the full assembly. You have spent this entire process judging humanity by your standards. Speed of construction. Elegance of method. Efficiency of resource use. By those standards, we fail. We will always fail, but your standards are wrong. Shocked silence. Civilization is not about efficiency. It is not about perfection. It is about meaning, purpose, connection to place and to each other. It is about looking at hostile terrain and saying this will be home, and making it true through sweat and sacrifice. Humanity builds the way we build because we understand something the galaxy has forgotten. Life is short. The universe is vast and indifferent. The only victory is creating something that matters, something that outlasts us, something that tells the void we were here and we refuse to simply exist when we could truly live. Vera raised her hands, still marked with cuts and calluses from 26 hours of continuous labor. These hands built a home on a world that wanted us dead. These hands will build 1,000 more homes, 1,000,000 more, spreading across the stars until humanity's presence cannot be erased. And every home will hold the same truth. We are not primitives to be judged. We are builders to be understood. She lowered her hands. Vote however you choose. Our future will be determined by our own hands, not yours. The prime arbiter called for the vote. Species by species, the count accumulated. Lights appeared throughout the assembly, each one representing the decision of a civilization. The Palori voted in. Favor of humanity. The crystalline assembly voted in. Favor. The collective voted in favor. The wandering people voted in favor. The hegemony and its allies voted against, but the numbers were clear, overwhelming, decisive. A margin of 723 to 177. The prime arbiter announced, the council formally recognizes human settlement capabilities. Furthermore, the council establishes the home building initiative, through which species may observe and learn from human methods. The assembly dissolved into the chaos of a galaxy, adjusting to new reality. Vera was not watching the delegates. She was watching Walking Far, who approached her with something like wonder in those deep well eyes. You have given me something I believed impossible to find, the wanderer said. What is that? A reason to stop wandering. Walking Far looked toward the chamber's impossible ceiling. Perhaps it is time to learn what home means. 6 months later, the colony ship descended through the amber atmosphere of Kepler-442b. Vera stood at the center of the settlement, watching 300 new colonists arrive. The gray prefab structures were changing now, block by block, wall by wall. Gardens grew between buildings. Painted murals covered surfaces that once held only corporate logos. The home she had built during the demonstration stood at the colony's heart. Its walls bore dozens of new paintings, added by colonists who wanted to leave their mark. The photograph in its frame had been joined by others. The shelves held objects from 100 different families. A delegation of aliens had arrived the month before. Palori, bringing bioforming seeds adapted to human aesthetics. Crystalline observers contributing molecular bonding agents. Even wanderers, stopping to rest and learn what permanence felt like. Rosa approached with a message from Earth Command. The Council has approved our expansion request. 3 new planets. Full settlement rights. Vera nodded, still watching the colony ship complete its landing. Marco was on that ship, his arm fully healed, bringing his family to the world he had helped build. Amira had stayed to establish environmental systems. Lars was already surveying the new sites. They would build more homes. They would fill the galaxy with meaning. One structure at a time. Vera said quietly. She walked toward the landing zone, toward the new arrivals. Toward the future humanity was claiming one home at a time. Behind her, the binary suns caught her windows at exactly the angle she had planned, filling her structure with light. The galaxy had asked if humans could build permanent civilization. She had given them an answer they would never forget.